She was a beacon of hope for millions, a voice of resilience. Shay McAllister's rise to fame was nothing short of extraordinary. From growing up in the rough streets of Brooklyn to becoming a motivational speaker who captivated the world, she embodied the very essence of overcoming adversity. But one betrayal shattered her world, and the truth behind her tragic end was darker than anyone could have imagined. How does a woman who dedicated her life to inspiring others fall victim to a web of deceit and manipulation? What happens when the very platform you've built to empower others becomes the thing that brings you down? Shay's story is a stark reminder of how fragile success can be and how quickly the truth can unravel. Before we dive into this shocking story, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more tales of betrayal, survival, and heartbreak. Shay McAllister was only 32 years old when she became a household name, but her journey to that point was anything but ordinary. Born and raised in the heart of Brooklyn, New York, she grew up surrounded by the harsh realities of systemic poverty, violence, and emotional trauma. From an early age, life seemed determined to break her. But instead of being consumed by the weight of her circumstances, Shay did something extraordinary: she fought back. She turned her pain into fuel, and in doing so, found the power to transform her life. Shay's story was one of resilience, and it captivated millions. She became a beacon of hope for young women of color, those who, like her, had been ignored, marginalized, and left behind by society. She didn't just survive her upbringing, she thrived. Her message was clear and resonated with so many: no matter how dark your past, no matter the odds stacked against you, there is always a way forward. Shay was the living proof of that. Her rise to prominence was swift, and it wasn't just luck. It was a combination of hard work, authenticity, and a message that resonated deeply with those who needed it most. She became a prominent motivational speaker, not just at local events, but on grand stages like TED Talks, where her raw and powerful story moved audiences to tears. Social media helped amplify her voice, and soon, her Instagram account, with over 500,000 followers, became a virtual community of support, inspiration, and empowerment. Shay's message spread far beyond social media, too. Influencers and celebrities alike were drawn to her authenticity and strength. Her collaborations were highly sought after, and her words became a guiding light for those looking to overcome their own struggles. Shay was more than just a motivational speaker; she was a symbol of strength, someone who had turned her most painful experiences into lessons of empowerment. People admired her for being unapologetically herself, raw, real, and unfiltered. She didn't sugarcoat her past, nor did she try to hide the pain. She wore it as a badge of honor, telling her followers that their pain didn't define them, but how they chose to rise above it did. Shay became a role model for countless young women who saw her as proof that their circumstances didn't have to determine their future. Her growing influence made her a powerhouse in the motivational space. It seemed like nothing could stop her, until, in a moment, everything changed. But before that, Shay was riding high, her future as bright as the messages of hope she shared. The world believed in her, and for a time, she believed in herself, too. Little did anyone know, the very foundation of her success, her message, her power, her influence, was about to be shattered by a betrayal so deep, it would send shockwaves through the very community that had once lifted her up. Shay McAllister's life had always been an open book, her past laid bare for the world to see. She had built her reputation on honesty, on the raw vulnerability that made her relatable to millions. But no one could have predicted the dark secret that would slowly unravel everything she had worked for. It all began with a post on The Block, a popular gossip blog known for exposing the most salacious secrets of the rich and famous. At first, it seemed like another typical rumor, a fleeting headline that would soon be forgotten. But this story was different. The blog posted a grainy, shadowy photo of Shay, standing with a man. The accompanying caption dropped a bombshell: Shay had been having an affair with Malik Patterson, the husband of her close friend Kiana. The image alone would have been enough to spark controversy, but what followed made things worse. The blog linked to an old video of Shay talking about betrayal, and in the context of her powerful speech, her words about trust and integrity took on a haunting new meaning. The affair, long hidden from the public eye, was now exposed for the world to see. In the blink of an eye, Shay's world was turned upside down. The comment sections on her social media accounts erupted, flooded with accusations and vitriol. Followers who had once admired her strength now felt deceived. How could someone who preached about overcoming adversity and integrity be capable of such a betrayal? The backlash was swift and unforgiving, and Shay's credibility as a motivational speaker was now in question. But the affair was only the surface of a much darker truth. What no one knew was that Malik Patterson had been using their relationship as leverage for months, manipulating Shay into helping him with his business dealings. A local entrepreneur with an image of success, Malik had managed to keep his dark side hidden, until now. He had a plan, and Shay was the pawn he used to execute it. Behind closed doors, Malik had been blackmailing Shay, threatening to expose their affair if she didn't comply with his demands. He used their secret relationship as a weapon, forcing her into making decisions that jeopardized not only her career but her personal life as well. Shay, desperate to keep her reputation intact, had agreed to his demands. She thought she could manage the pressure, that she could keep her life together while fulfilling Malik's wishes. But the weight of his manipulation was suffocating her, and each compromise she made took a little more of her power away. The most painful part of it all was that Shay never saw Malik for who he truly was, a man who was using her to further his own ambitions. He was always charming, always seemingly supportive, and for a time, Shay had trusted him. But the truth was, he had never cared for her. He had only cared about using her for his own gain. And the worst part was that no one knew this, not even Kiana, Shay's closest friend. Kiana, devastated by the revelation of the affair, was left reeling. She had no idea that her husband had been blackmailing Shay, and when the blog post went viral, Kiana's world fell apart. The woman she had trusted with her deepest secrets, the woman who had been like a sister to her, had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way. But what Kiana didn't know was that Shay had been trapped. She hadn't sought out this affair, she hadn't wanted to destroy their friendship. She was simply a victim of a twisted scheme orchestrated by Malik, who had been playing both women against each other for his own benefit. Kiana's heartbreak and anger were fueled by a lie she didn't fully understand, and as the weeks passed, the tension between her and Shay grew unbearable. Shay's life, once filled with the love and admiration of her followers, was now a whirlwind of confusion, shame, and regret. The trust she had built with so many had been shattered, and with it, the very foundation of her career. The platform that had once been a place of empowerment was now a stage for the darkest chapter of her life, one that she couldn't escape. As the truth came out piece by piece, Shay was left standing at the center of a storm, struggling to hold on to the pieces of her life. She had built a legacy on honesty and strength, but now, the very thing that had made her a symbol of hope had become the thing that threatened to tear her apart. The betrayal that had started as a hidden affair was now the catalyst for the unraveling of everything she had ever stood for. And as she faced the fallout, it became clear that Shay's story was far from over, though it would never be the same. The fallout from the affair was swift and unforgiving. Shay McAllister's name, once synonymous with resilience and strength, was now a symbol of betrayal. The public, who had once hailed her as a beacon of hope, turned against her with a ferocity that shook her to the core. What had begun as a scandal about a personal mistake quickly morphed into a wave of condemnation. Her social media accounts, once filled with messages of empowerment, were now overwhelmed with hate. Followers, who had believed in her journey and had drawn strength from her story, now felt betrayed by the woman they had trusted. The comment sections of her posts became a battleground, filled with accusations of hypocrisy. "You're a fraud," some wrote. "How can we trust you when you couldn't even trust your own friend?" Others were even more scathing, questioning her integrity and tarnishing everything she had worked so hard to build. The backlash came from all sides, her fans, her peers, and even those who had once considered her a friend. Shay had always preached about being transparent and honest, about facing adversity with grace. Now, in the face of her own mistake, she felt the weight of the very expectations she had set for herself. But the most gut-wrenching moment came when Kiana, her close friend and the wife of Malik, posted a tearful video on social media. Kiana, devastated by the betrayal, was a woman undone by the revelation that the person she trusted most had been the one to destroy her family. With shaking hands and a voice filled with pain, Kiana confronted Shay, accusing her of tearing apart everything she held dear. Her words were raw, full of sorrow and anger. "You destroyed my family. You violated my trust, Shay. I hope you're ready to face the consequences," she said, before breaking down in tears. For Shay, hearing those words from Kiana, the woman who had once been her closest friend, was like a dagger to the heart. The weight of the guilt and shame crushed her. The media frenzy only escalated from there. Stories flooded the press, and news outlets speculated about the affair, the damage it had done, and whether Shay would be able to salvage her career. The messages from her followers, the people who had once looked up to her, were filled with disappointment. Some tried to offer support, but the overwhelming majority were unforgiving. Shay's once bright and hopeful presence on social media was now a shadow of what it had been. Shay knew she couldn't hide from the truth any longer. Overcome with guilt, her mind racing with regret and the mounting pressure of the public's judgment, she made a choice. She sat down and wrote one final post. It was raw, unfiltered, and filled with the weight of her remorse. She admitted to the affair, taking full responsibility for her actions. She expressed her regret for the pain she had caused Kiana, Malik, and her followers. "I am so sorry for the hurt I've caused," she wrote. "This is not who I wanted to be, and I promise to learn from my mistakes. I take full responsibility." But the post ended with something that sent a chill down the spine of anyone who read it. "Some wounds are too deep to heal. I'm sorry for everything." Those words hung in the air, a cryptic message that only deepened the sense of despair that had been building around her. The post was met with a mix of responses. Some supported her apology, but for many, the damage had already been done. The world she had so carefully built, the platform she had created to uplift and inspire, seemed to crumble before her eyes. And as the comments continued to flood in, Shay felt herself slipping further away from the woman she had once been, from the woman everyone had believed in. In the hours that followed, the unthinkable happened. Shay's final message to the world was the last one anyone would hear from her. Less than an hour after posting her heartfelt apology, the world would learn of the devastating end to Shay McAllister's life. The news came as a gut-wrenching shock. Shay was found in her apartment, her body lying lifeless on the floor. A gunshot wound to her head, her phone still beside her, the screen open to the post she had shared just moments before. Her final words, full of regret and sorrow, hung in the air like an echo, unfinished, unanswered. Her followers, her friends, and the world that had once adored her were left in a state of disbelief. The truth of what happened that night sent shockwaves through the community. How had it come to this? A woman who had risen from the ashes, fought for her voice, and dedicated her life to helping others, how had she ended up alone, in the silence of her own despair? The questions began to pile up, but there would be no immediate answers, only a haunting void left by her absence. The police investigation unfolded, revealing the heartbreaking details behind Shay's tragic end. Authorities quickly determined that Shay's death was a suicide. The weight of the scandal, the relentless media pressure, and the overwhelming sense of guilt had proven too much to bear. Shay had taken her life, and with her, took the answers to the questions she had never been able to fully address. But as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something more disturbing, evidence that revealed the true extent of the manipulation she had suffered. The story of her affair with Malik Patterson was far darker than anyone had known. Malik had not just been a participant in an affair that destroyed his own marriage, he had been using his relationship with Shay as leverage for months. Threatening messages, recordings of heated conversations, and a trail of blackmail had been left behind, pointing directly to Malik's role in pushing Shay to the edge. He had used his hold over her to manipulate her into helping with his business dealings, threatening to expose their affair if she didn't comply. Shay, already burdened by guilt and regret over the betrayal to Kiana, had been trapped, cornered by a man who had no qualms about exploiting her for his own gain. The investigators pieced together the chilling truth. Malik had preyed on Shay's sense of loyalty and vulnerability, coercing her into decisions that compromised her career and personal life. The evidence was damning, showing that Malik had used every weapon in his arsenal, shame, fear, and manipulation, to keep Shay in his control. Shay had been a pawn in a much larger game, a game that ultimately cost her everything. As the details came to light, it became painfully clear that Malik's actions had played a direct role in Shay's death. His blackmail, his cruelty, and his emotional manipulation had pushed Shay into a corner, making her feel as though there was no escape. The world had witnessed her unraveling, but they had not known the depths of the pain she had been carrying in silence. And now, with Shay gone, a grieving community was left to process not only the loss of a woman they had admired but also the devastating truth behind her tragic end. The questions that remained, the accusations and the hurt, lingered in the air like a storm waiting to break. How much had Shay truly known? Could she have ever escaped the web of deceit that had been woven around her? What could she have done differently? For those who had followed her, those who had seen her as a symbol of strength and hope, the answers would never come easily. The questions would remain unanswered, haunting the lives of those who had loved her and believed in her message. The public's perception of Shay began to shift. Once hailed as a beacon of strength and resilience, her story now took on a new, more heartbreaking dimension. People who had once seen her as a symbol of empowerment began to understand that she had been more than just a woman who made mistakes, she had been a victim. A victim of a man who had known exactly how to prey on her emotional struggles, using her past pain and desire to help others as tools to manipulate her into betraying everything she stood for. Kiana Patterson, Malik's wife and the woman whose trust had been shattered by the affair, found herself caught in a whirlwind of her own. Though devastated by the betrayal, Kiana slowly began to piece together the truth about what had actually happened. For months, Malik had been lying to her, feeding her false information about his relationship with Shay. He had been using Kiana's trust to set a trap that would destroy Shay's life and reputation. Kiana had no idea that Malik was using her to orchestrate this cruel plot. When she finally learned the truth, it was too late for any apology to undo the damage. Kiana, broken but determined, bravely came forward with the truth. She spoke out about how Malik had manipulated her into believing Shay was the instigator of the affair, how he had intentionally set her up to confront Shay without the full picture. It was Malik's lies, his manipulation, and his cruelty that had set everything in motion, and Kiana's painful revelation added weight to the growing understanding of just how deep the deception had run. The truth had finally been unveiled, but it was a truth that left a bitter taste in the mouths of all who had followed Shay's journey. Shay McAllister's death left a community shattered and divided. The outpouring of grief from her followers was palpable, but for many, there was also a sense of betrayal. The woman they had looked up to, the motivational speaker who had inspired countless individuals to overcome their struggles, was no longer the image of strength they had believed her to be. Her affair, the blackmail, and the scandal that followed painted a different picture, a complicated, deeply painful truth that many were unwilling to accept. How could someone so powerful, so seemingly unbreakable, have fallen victim to such manipulation? As the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that the affair was only the tip of the iceberg. Shay had been the target of a ruthless scheme designed by Malik Patterson and, unknowingly, by Kiana, only added layers to the tragedy. For some, understanding that Shay had been manipulated into making choices that ultimately led to her demise did little to absolve her of guilt. The public, once her loyal supporters, found it difficult to reconcile their admiration for her with the mistakes she had made. And yet, as the truth emerged, a more complicated picture began to take shape. While Shay had been a victim in the grand scheme of things, the damage to her reputation was irreparable. No amount of explanation or justice could undo the deep wound that had been inflicted on her legacy. Some chose to focus on the inspiration she had provided in life, holding on to the messages of resilience she had once shared. Others, however, couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. The love and trust they had placed in Shay, the woman who had built her career on promoting authenticity and empowerment, had been deeply shaken. Malik Patterson's trial had concluded with the conviction of blackmail, emotional abuse, and involuntary manslaughter. Sentenced to 25 years in prison, Malik was left to reflect on the destruction his manipulations had caused. His once promising career as a local entrepreneur was in ruins, his name now synonymous with exploitation and deceit. The man who had once been a figure of success was now a prisoner, facing the consequences of his greed and emotional cruelty. But even in prison, Malik's reckoning was far from over. He had not only lost his freedom but had also lost his place in the community. The very people who had once admired him now saw him as nothing more than a predator, a man who used trust and love as tools for control. Kiana, despite being a victim herself, had her own path to navigate. During the trial, her own actions had been laid bare, and the role she had played in the unraveling of Shay's life was impossible to ignore. The emotional toll of the affair, the lies, and the manipulation had taken its toll on Kiana too. Her testimony against Malik, though it shed light on the truth, could not erase the damage she had caused. She was sentenced to 5 years for emotional abuse and defamation, her life forever marked by the actions of her ex-husband. Though Kiana had been manipulated by Malik, her own decisions had led to the destruction of her friendship with Shay and the collapse of her marriage. In the aftermath of the trial, both Malik and Kiana's lives were changed beyond recognition. For Malik, prison was a stark reminder of the cost of his ambition and cruelty. For Kiana, the weight of her own choices and the knowledge that she had contributed to Shay's suffering would be a constant burden. Both of them would spend the rest of their lives trying to reconcile with the parts of themselves they had lost along the way. Shay's story had become more than just a cautionary tale, it was a mirror reflecting the dangers of unchecked manipulation, betrayal, and the destructive power of public personas. Her tragic end highlighted how someone who appeared to have it all could still be vulnerable to exploitation. She had inspired so many with her message of overcoming adversity, yet her own life was a testament to how easily those very principles could be twisted by the wrong people. Shay's legacy would forever be intertwined with the lessons of her downfall. It was a grim reminder of how fragile trust can be, and how deeply the scars of manipulation can run. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story left you speechless, be sure to like and subscribe for more tales that drag the darkest secrets of love, revenge, and betrayal into the light.